lot coverage and area requirements for new waterfront lots?
Yes, it's lot frontage and area requirements for new waterfront lots. And as this committee is aware, we've increased across the board the minimum lot area and lot frontage required for new lots on basically every lake except Lake Joseph, which was already at a higher number. So on Lakes Muskoka and Rosso, the minimum lot area is proposed to increase from 0.4 hectares, and the frontage is going to go from 60 to 90 meters. So it'll be 8.8 hectares and 90. On the 28 category 2 lakes, the minimum lot area and frontage is also going up from 0.4 to 0.8 and from 60 to 90. And then on the remaining category 3 lakes, the minimum lot frontage will be 0.8 hectares and 120 meters. We've also made changes in terms of the minimum lot area and waterfront required on lots where steep slopes are present, on narrow water bodies, and of course, as already discussed, if a water access only lot is proposed in response to a question about whether this made sense or not. In the survey, 71% said yes and 29% no. Certainly requiring larger lots further limits the number of new lots that can be created. We've already heard that. That's a clear outcome of this kind of policy. It certainly limits the number of new septic systems on the large and medium-sized lakes that can be developed, protects the tree character of the remaining undeveloped area, and the underdeveloped shoreline areas. So in looking at this and thinking about this, I think it's entirely appropriate for the township to move in this direction for the reasons noted. So my recommendation is to maintain the course and continue to include these revised lot frontages and areas in the next draft of the official plan.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Harding.
Thank you. And I know the public has generally said yes to this regarding increases. I want to just put it out there for committee's perspective. The bigger lots we have, the more financial and the bigger the investment is in anybody who's buying into Muskoka. If we have seen the most egregious of irresponsible development, it would probably be on Lake Joseph, which already has the biggest development of lots at 300 feet. The more money it takes for me to buy a lot, the more development I'm probably going to do around the lot. I didn't chime in on our last discussion about we're just encouraging people to build bigger boathouses. The reality is I have never seen an application where they don't maximize the size of the boathouse. If I have 300 feet, I build 75 feet of dock and I'm building my 18% of boathouse width. We always recognize, and Councillor Edwards would confirm at Committee of Adjustment, generally speaking, we're going from 10 to somewhere to 11% of lot coverage to be able to maximize the buildings on our properties. And people are trying to redevelop within the confines that they have currently. So we don't really have policies to incentivize smaller boathouses. They're always building the biggest boathouses, the biggest cottages. And I question that there'd be an unintended consequence of creating larger lots. And as soon as you hit 300 feet, it means every boat, every cottage is entitled a 2-story boathouse. So as we move forward, we're going to expect more 2-story boathouses, more development on the water. We're not pushing people back and putting bunkie cottages on land because as of right, I can now build a 2-story boathouse. So I raise this question because we also at times, I think, make Muskoka unaffordable. And I've said this before, that my best neighbors are the people who are scraping by to pay their taxes. The people who don't have big boathouses, who have small 100-foot lots, they're the most respectful. It's sometimes the new, I want to be in Muskoka and I want to show off what I have, that people are not as respectful as we would like. So that's my high level. That do we want to go down this 300-foot line, and there might be some significant unintended consequences moving. So.
Okay, Councillor Hayes.
Thank you. Through you, I just have a couple of points. Just on Lake Muskoka, where we're talking about increasing it from 300 to 400, if I could ask staff, what are the requirements for Bracebridge and Gravenhurst? Because we share the lake with them, and we should have some kind of compliance going forward so that development is mirrored within the 3 areas that occupy the lake. And do we know yet how many lots we have that are over 600 feet? Because we're looking at changing it from 300 feet. So a severance would be 600. So do we know how many? And another issue would be how many of those are on the mainland and how many are islands that could be developed? Because islands require a little bit different handling than on the mainland. So I would like that number before we proceed with changing Muskoka Lakes, because it does affect what people have planned to do generationally with their property. So thank you for that.
Was that a question somewhere, Councillor Hayes? I think Mr. Pink wants to answer.
Yeah, I think that the 2 questions were, how many do we have? Which are island, which are mainland? And what do Gravenhurst and Bracebridge require for severances on Muskoka Lakes?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What I can say is the Muskoka official plan has a 200-foot, 1 acre minimum. So I believe Bracebridge and Gravenhurst would still allow lots at those dimensions, at those minimum dimensions, as we currently do. I don't want to guess. I would have to research more specifically. It's likely both Bracebridge and Gravenhurst have increased requirements as we do, depending on any natural or topographical constraints. But we can certainly look into that. In regards to, we can certainly do GIS exercise, a query on how many 600-foot lots remain. Keep in mind, our limitations are, it would be based off assessment information. And as you know, not 100% accurate, number 1. And number 2, the way we measure frontage and the way you necessarily would lay out a property doesn't always line up neatly with an assessed frontage. But if committee wishes, we can certainly do that exercise to see how many properties remain in Muskoka or on the big 3 lakes, medium lakes. I'd like some parameters. The other thing you do need to consider is you may have a 600-foot property with a very large recent dwelling in the smack dab in the middle of it, and a 2-story boathouse in the middle of it. So we can run those numbers, and I think Mr. Clark noted that we don't necessarily have that information. The difficulty is we can do those basic query searches based off assessment information, but it's sometimes going to paint a misleading picture. It would take extensive amount of time to literally look into every individual property to really research properly whether it has subdivision rights currently and would have subdivision rights under the current proposal. There's no question the proposal before you is to, would significantly reduce the number of lots, potential lots out there by adding the 100 feet. But it would be quite the exercise to give you an accurate number of, properties that would impact.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'm supportive of this recommendation, but I have a question. And it may be just my lack of seeing it. I don't see where islands have been dealt with separately from mainland properties. And why I raise it is that islands less than 0.8 hectare maybe should be dealt with differently, and islands larger than that have a problem because they have very large frontages, and they are usually very shallow lots. So they generally come up and have subdivision rights, and that allows much more development. So I just wondered if there was a recommendation for island lots and whether I missed it or whether you're thinking about it.
Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, section E4.4.4 requires a 1 hectare minimum lot area for water access only lots. And I believe that's an increase over the 0.8 hectares that's currently there. So there is an increase there too. As Mr. Pink will indicate, because he's indicated this to me on a couple of occasions, with islands, the minimum lot area ends up being the most important requirement than the actual frontage, and that becomes the determining factor on whether it's actually possible to create lots on islands. If Mr. Pick wants to further comment on that, please do.
Mr. Pink.
Just very quickly, thank you, through you, the chair. Currently, island properties already have an increased requirement. They're currently at 300 feet and 2 acres. And as Mr. McDonald noted, we're suggesting a slight increase to the lot area. And as he noted, it's typically the lot area that's your determining factor on lot creation of island properties. Typically, the frontage is there. It's the acreage that limits the number of lots that can be created. So increasing that from 0.8 to 1 hectare would have more of an impact than likely increasing the frontage would.
So quick supplementary. So I missed it because it wasn't in the summary, but it is in the detail. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I would be in support of what David had just mentioned about the islands. I think it is often, I think we created 2 small lots, not necessarily the frontage, but the lot overall. As well, though, that I'm happy with 300 feet of frontage. I don't want to see movement there. I don't know what our overall vision of what we're trying to do, other than limit that many more people that should come to Muskoka, I guess.
Mayor Harding.
Thank you. I want to back up to my question and comment about unintended consequences about creating bigger lots and creating more development on our lake. And maybe Mr. Pink or Mr. Sharp even can help answer this question. When people come in for a planning exercise and they've got a 200-foot lot or a 300-foot lot, are they planning a 5% lot development that we've seen in the past? Or are they planning a 10 to an 11% lot coverage? Are they maxing out the development rights that are within the lots? And the point being that if we are creating bigger lots, we are creating potentially bigger development on said lots, which could compound our problem with an unintended consequence. So I'm not sure who wants to answer that.
Mr. Pink.
Thank you. Through you. Obviously, I can't generalize and speak for every property owner and their plans, but certainly there is a demand, a pressure to build larger in Muskoka. And I get the concern, and that's certainly something committee needs to consider, that essentially every new lot will have the rights for a 2-story boathouse. But what I would say, yes, typically larger lots do have larger developments. I wouldn't dispute that, but I find with that said, larger properties still retain much more natural area, much more forested area, much more natural area. I typically have more concerns with very small properties because the septic system, the driveway, the parking area, access to the waterfront, those are all finite and set. And when you have a very small property of less than an acre, there tends to be much less natural area remaining on that property than a 2, 3, 4, 5 acre property. Yes, it may have a large cottage and a large 2-story boathouse, but there's still natural frontage along the shoreline, and there's still natural forested areas where you won't typically see that on a half-acre property because all those standard sort of requirements of developing a waterfront property are set. So hopefully that helps frame it somewhat.
Okay, so I often my opinion's been expressed by everybody else, so I know I don't chime in very often, but I thinking about Mayor Harding talking about going to 300 feet and you've got 2 boathouses. Well, if you stay at 200 feet, you've got 3 properties. I think to Director Pink's point, you now have 3 properties with the possibility of 3 boathouses instead of 2 boathouses. And again, 3 cottages instead of 2. So I honestly don't think there's an unintended consequence out of that. And I think the other thing I want to point out for anybody listening in, all of the properties that are already developed, the 200-foot ones, the 100, they all resell at whatever size they are. So we're only talking about new development here and new new properties. We aren't talking about the majority of the properties in Muskoka. So I do want to point that out to everybody. And as we see happen when we do these changes, people that have less than 600 feet who want to subdivide will have the opportunity to do that. It may not fit into their current plans, but they do have a time window to be able to do those subdivisions if they really want to do it. So I am in complete support of this. All right, so I know we've had some discussion here. Can I get a straw vote? Are we going forward with what's been recommended here? Councillor Edwards, before I go there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I agree with this. Let's see what the people do. But I would ask the consultants again, as I'd asked them originally, put in the imperial measurements as well. Yes, I know that 0.8 is 2 acres, and I know what 1 is 2.5, but there's a lot of people that are still thinking the old way. And it would be nice that they didn't have to do all the conversions. Thank you.
Is that in your program, Mr. McDonald? Like, can you just do an automatic conversion in the program?
Not necessarily, but what I did do in this last draft is I did do exactly what Councillor Edwards asked. So in the actual official plan, we do have the imperial everywhere. I just didn't do it in this memorandum, so I apologize for that.
Okay, so do we have general agreement on this moving forward as is? Can I see maybe a show of hands? I know Mayor Harding, you want to say something?
So I'm agreeing. I'm happy to move this forward at this particular time, just so people understand. Councillor Hayes had sort of looked at asking staff to do some quick measurements on how many 600-foot lots there are. I think the other thing that would be interesting is in the past number of years, how many 200-foot lots have been created. Because I do believe that most people, even though they have slightly larger, maybe they have 500 feet, they create 2 250s. They don't necessarily, or they had 600, they do 1 300. I don't know what they develop. And I think that's sort of interesting to see whether they're actually developing to 200 feet. I know whenever we've contemplated someone who's dividing up their property, we always push them for bigger lots, not smaller at the best of times. So they never really follow the bylaw. They're always exceeding it for the most part, I believe. So it'd be interesting just to have that data as we move forward to a public meeting with the next draft.
Okay, thank you. So we have General Councillor Jaglowitz.
Yeah, just a quick comment. I guess I have a different experience when lots are created. Generally, they go to committee of adjustment and try to create the lot smaller. But anyway, so I don't think that information is necessary. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pink, do you, Councillor Nishikawa? All right.
Thank you. Sorry, my question is to you. I'm not sure what we're giving our thumbs up for. I've heard lots of different thoughts and ideas, and I'm just to say, are we all in agreement with the policy written? Well, I don't think that we are, because I've heard from 4 different speakers that said different things, and so I'm concerned about what we're asking to be moved forward. Very clearly, what we're being asked to move forward.
Okay, thank you. We have had different comments, so what I am asking is, as written, increasing the lot size on all of this, do we have a majority, because that's the way we're going to have to go here, that want this to move forward for public opinion the way it's written? So can I have a straw vote on that? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Can you just
Councillor Mazan, is your hand up? It's hard to see. You're a little blurry. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, we're good. We're good.
5, 6. I think we've got 6, right? So it's going to go out to the public, and we'll see what comes back from the public on this.